So apparently Uber has some kind of quest going on where you do 3 trips, you get $80. So let's get out there and make this quick $80. Time to go in and pick up this order so I can get this quest for $80 for 3 trips. Well, the first step. Let's go. Got it? Let's start heading to the drop off. One down, 2 more to go. Order 2 is rolled in. Let's do it. Just finished dropping off that order. It was a leave at the door, which is pretty much normal these days. And I tried to take a picture and it took forever to verify the photo. Orders kept coming in that I didn't want, just kept declining them. So I just had to skip the photo altogether. One way that Uber can improve this app is we take a photo, just for freaking sake, just have it go in. You don't need to verify something, just have it uploaded. Simple. Anyway, let's move on to the next order. Just need one more in order for us to hit that quest goal and get an extra $80. Wow, this just came in just as I pulled up for gas. So I'm gonna fill up, then we're gonna knock this quest out. That way it took longer than I would have preferred, but it is gonna give me the $80. All right, let's go drop this off and collect on this quest. Bam, baby, got it. Sup everyone, it's Elijah with the App Lifestyle, the place where the world is literally in the palm of your hands. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing a tool which will help you increase your earnings as a gig economy delivery driver, if you will, as well as increase your overall awareness of what your market has to offer. And as a bonus, it'll also give you insight into how much you should be saving per delivery so you can plan for some surprise expenses and even plan for investing in retirement, since if we're going to be honest, that's some of the jobs did for a lot of people. But if you're going to be in this gig economy, we got to take a little self-initiative. So I'm currently outside enjoying the nature just as I wait for another ping. Actually, this is in between the lunch and dinner shift, so maybe I'm just here chilling. But we're actually going to go back to the house and get on the computer so I can share with you this tool that can help you make the most money and do everything I mentioned so far. So let's go. Okay everyone, so right off the bat, you'll need the App Lifestyle monthly spreadsheet in order to do this, because you'll be able to input the information that will give you the data you need to be the best you can when it comes to making money with these gig apps. Specifically, we're talking about delivery. We're not really talking about rideshare here. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Y'all just give me one brief second to do that. Poof. Okay. Now I'm gonna go away because it'll make the screen bigger. There we go. Cool. And I'll take the brand logo off now so you can see the whole thing. All right, perfect. So we're gonna go through the columns here and kind of break down why each one of them is valuable and why you don't want to skip anything. Now, right off the bat at the bottom, you see that the whole year has been put through here. Now, the reason I did that is because y'all probably know that at different points of the year, it's more busier than others. Like during the holidays, it's going to be busier than at the beginning of the year. And the summer is going to be different from the winter. Y'all know this. With that being the case, you can go ahead and pick up on whatever month you're in right now when you get this spreadsheet, and you can get some accurate numbers based on those market conditions. And let's say a year from now, if you've been doing this for a year, you can kind of have an idea of what to expect during those months, because you'll have accurate data on your market and also that calendar year. So the first column, which is column A, is you want to make sure you put the date. So we're going to go and go to July's month. There we go. So the first thing we want to cover is the date. And the reason that's important is because of what we just talked about. This is more or less a metric that you can use just to track what day you made that money. Not super important, but it is kind of important if you know what I mean. Next is the city, and this is something you don't want to overlook. The reason I say that is because we already know that different cities in your market might pay differently. Some cities might be booming with activity and you making money. Other cities might be kind of slower. And this is going to make even more sense when we get into some of these other columns, but the city is pretty important. Next, if there's any kind of bonus that's going on, that day or whatever, you can always put that here. It doesn't affect anything in the spreadsheet in terms of formulas, but it's just like a personal reminder to let yourself know that, hey, there was a bonus going on this day. So I need to take that in consideration when I'm looking at this data. Next up, we have the shift. Now, there are a few shifts that you can put here. There's the breakfast shift, which is between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. The lunch shift, which is between 10 and 2 p.m. The dinner shift, which is between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. And then the overnight shift, which is between midnight and 6 a.m. And anything in between there, usually they're not like huge pockets of activity. So I don't tend to include those unless I'm including like the whole day. So if I did a whole day's worth of work, I would just put whole day for the shift. But let's say I just did breakfast and lunch, I'm gonna put that. I just did lunch and dinner, I'm gonna put that. The reason being is when you put the shift, you're letting yourself know, okay, when I work these hours, I tend to make these earnings. Next, we're going to move on to the hours. Now, the hours is the total time that you've worked when you've left the house. That may or may not be accurate with what the app is tracking. So you might want to mentally keep in mind when you leave, like I left at 10 o'clock, then I came back at 7 or whatever, and count those hours. And I don't personally count any lunch breaks, or if I'm at a restaurant eating or something, I don't count those. It's up to you if you want to count that or not, but that's how I handle it. The gas, you want to put how much you spent on gas that day, if you spent any at all. Your gross revenue earnings, this is where you put how much you made for the day. And the next column is net revenue. Now, the net revenue is how much you made minus your expenses. So you don't need to put anything there. You just fill the rest of the data out, and it's going to spit out the net revenue that you're making. That's the important number that we want. A lot of people look at gross, but if you made a bunch of money but had to spend a bunch of money, is it really that valuable? You want to look at your net revenue, and this is going to spit out an answer for you. Next, we have the revenue per hour. This is something you don't have to fill out. All you got to do is fill out the rest of the spreadsheet, and it's going to let you know how much you're making per hour automatically. Next column is the number of deliveries that you're actually doing. Now, this is important because it's going to give us another metric, which is right next to it. So you just put in how many deliveries you did that day. But the average per delivery, which is a column next to it, this is what I really, 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 really want y'all to focus on because it kind of lets you know what to expect in that city at that time. And if you're dipping below those earnings, then you might want to reevaluate going somewhere else. Or if those earnings are trending upward, then maybe you want to give that city and that time more attention because it's definitely more profitable for you. Next, we have money for savings. Now, the money for savings, I recommend that you take 15% of your earnings and put it aside towards savings just by default. So if something never comes up, not having to go and hustle the money, you can just pull it out of your savings. So based on how much you're making, the spreadsheet automatically puts what amount you should be putting in savings. And that amount is 15%. Now, if you want to use a greater percentage, feel free, I guess. Next, we have the deductible mileage. So you want to put the total amount of mileage you drove that day because we got to remember that the mileage you drive, there's also a tax deduction associated with it. Assuming you're going to do the standard mileage deduction, but most people would use that, so that's why it's operated into the spreadsheet. So once you put the mileage in, it's going to let you know exactly how much you're saving in tax deductions because there's a formula in there that's automatically multiplying the mileage by this year's standard mileage deduction. Now we're going to scroll to the very bottom and we see money for retirement fund or investments. Now this is optional. It's all completely up to you, but it will give you the information if you want to take that into consideration. The magic number we use here is also 15%. So taking 15% of your earnings and putting it towards investing or a retirement fund is definitely something to consider because while you're doing all this in the gig economy, you don't want to neglect things as such as building wealth and also setting stuff up for your retirement because we got to be honest, that is something that traditional jobs probably were doing for us. So if we're going to be in this gig economy, we need to take some self-initiative. Now, if you're wondering, Elijah, I don't know anything about that stuff, you want to check this video out where I cover how to kind of set up a pretty decent retirement strategy and set it up on autopilot and even save up to maybe get yourself your first house. but that's covered in that video. And just cover myself just for entertainment purposes only. I'm not a financial advisor, so everything I say take with a grain of salt. But if you want to know more about that, check that video out. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put a series of dummy numbers in just so you can kind of see how this works. So for example, just gonna put 07 slash 23 slash 21. Okay, so we don't need this one or this one. And for the city, now these are dummy numbers. So I don't want y'all saying like, hey, in Elijah's market, you can make XYZ in like this city. No, these are dummy numbers. So I'm gonna use Cedar Hill for this example. Cedar Hill. And we're not gonna really put any bonuses in for this example because this is not really necessary. And for the shifts, so we're actually gonna cover every shift. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, and overnight. So right before we even put in the information on these, like the breakfast shift, based on what I told you, is 4 hours. Same goes for lunch. Dinner is 4 hours, but if you want to go to 10 o'clock, which sometimes I do, you can put 5. So I'll go ahead and put 5 hours. And overnight is 6 hours. Now, the total amount of gas spent that day is going to be the same for, like, obviously all 3 shifts. So you want to tally that up and just put it in one of them. You don't need to put it in each one. So we're going to say that we spent $20 on gas. Now, for this example, we're just going to do the lunch and dinner shifts because obviously it wouldn't be practical if you were working quite literally the whole day. We have to pick 2 shifts to stay reasonable. So for the gross revenue for the lunch shift, let's say for this example, we're able to pull about $75, which is actually pretty typical. And it spits out data for us. So net revenue from that shift is $55. It's letting us know that we're at $13.75. Scroll over to the right, we see how much we should be putting aside for savings. And we're going to put in our deductible mileage. I'm going to say for this shift, we drove about 30 miles. So it lets us know our deduction is $16.80. This gives us a wealth of information that we can now use when it comes to Cedar Hills lunch rush, how many hours we're working, and what we can kind of expect to make. Now, obviously, you're not going to know everything just from putting this information in once. This becomes more useful the more you use this. So let's go ahead and move on and put in the dinner data. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put in 0 for gas because if you're like me, you fill up once a day. You're not going to the tank and like freaking filling up with $5 or $10. It's like when I need gas, I fill up. So it's a 0. And the total amount made at dinner is I'm going to say $100. So in this case, our net revenue is the same as our gross because we didn't have the expense of a gas. And our revenue per hour for this dinner rush is $20. And we're going to say we slid in about 10 deliveries. So our average per delivery is $10. Slide over, so letting us know how much we can put aside for savings. And for the deductible mileage, say we drove a total of 40 miles. It's letting us know the deduction that we have. Now, just so you wonder, for the savings and the deduction, you can scroll to the bottom and all this is going to be added up for you. So you don't have to add that up later. And speaking of the bottom, you also see that your revenue is going to be tracked in the same way too. We're only keeping track of your net revenue. So it's always going to let you know your net revenue that's going to be added up, which is pretty important because that's one thing these apps aren't going to do for you. They're just going to show you how much they're paying you, not showing your net revenue. If you scroll down a bit further, it's keeping track of if you want to do the investments in retirement fund, like what's a reasonable amount to start putting towards that. Okay, so let's roll this back up and explain a few things. So there are 2 very important metrics. Well, everything in the spreadsheet is important, but I would say the most 2 important things is going to be the revenue per hour, which is this, and the average per delivery. The revenue per hour is important because, for one thing, it keeps track of all your earnings. So if you're driving for multiple delivery services like Uber Eats and DoorDash and Grubhub, all you gotta do is add all that up and put it in here. That in itself is useful, but it gives you an accurate number on how much you're actually making per hour. A lot of people will just add all those numbers up and divide it by the number of hours they were out, and then they'll use that per hour. And that's not exactly accurate. It's not taking into account any expenses. The number that comes up here is based off your net revenue, so it's an accurate number. Now, some people would include the depreciation of the car as an expense. I'm not going to do that because most of y'all are going to use the standard mileage deduction when you file your taxes, which means, scroll over to the right, those mileage that mileage that you're driving is going to serve towards saving you money via the standard mileage deduction on your taxes. The amount per mile always varies every year, but it's usually between 60 cents to 53 cents per mile. But since most people are going to take advantage of that, I'm not going to include depreciation and as an expense, if that makes any sense. Now, if you're not going to use the standard miles deduction, I suppose you could, but most of y'all aren't going to do that. And if you want to know more about taxes as a rideshare delivery person, you can check out the interview I did with enrolled agent Kamari Ellis, where we talk about standard miles deduction, the actual expense method, which one is best for delivery drivers. You can get more clarity on that there. The second and probably more important metric, in my opinion, is the average per delivery. In fact, let me bring myself on the screen for this. There we go. So why is this important, Elijah? Because it lets you know what you can get away with in your market at what time, in what city, and even what month of the year if you want to get that specific. Because as you put data in here as you're driving throughout the week or month, etc., it's going to give you numbers and feedback that's going to broaden your awareness of your city and your market. So, for example, let's say we see that the average per delivery for this particular shift at dinner time in Cedar Hill is 10 o'clock. Let's say we keep repeating that and we keep going out there at Cedar Hill driving that dinner rush. We're going to probably get some different numbers based on the data, but we're going to get a minimum and a maximum. So for argument's sake, let's say the lowest we've gotten is $8 and the most we've gotten is like around $10 as an average per delivery. Well, that means I'm not taking anything under $8 because I know this city can provide me with more. I'm just going to decline that and wait until something worth my time, quote unquote, comes up. You see how I just use this information to make even more money? Now we can flip that on its head and let's just say you just keep getting all these like $7 offers or whatever. You can decide that, okay, things are just for whatever reason they're upside down right now. I'm going to start taking these $7 orders. That's going to lower the average per delivery, but that just might be the new value that that city can offer you. So is that worth your time? Only you can answer that. But the point is, this gives you an accurate awareness of what is the maximum you can make in that city at that time and what's the minimum. And then you can make decisions based on that information. As far as the other metrics in here, it's obviously pretty good to know how much you're saving in taxes, obviously, based on the deduction. But truth be told, you can do that with Stride too. I don't consider this a replacement for using Stride or QuickBooks Self-Employed or the Mile IQ app. You should have something else tracking your miles and keeping track of all this, but it's still good to know in here in this spreadsheet. And it's also good to be saving some money and putting it aside for savings. So when something comes up, you don't have to just get out there and hustle the money. You can just get that taken care of and get back on the road as soon as possible. And if you're thinking even longer term, it's always good to be acquiring wealth and also planning for retirement. Like I said, I've talked about that in another video. So if you have an interest in that, you can check it out. It's linked in the description, and it's also one of the cards is linked to. But with that being said, that covers it for this video. Let me bring myself on the stream again, like myself fully on the stream. But if you haven't gotten the spreadsheet yet, you can do so in the description or in the pinned comment. Then you can start using it to plan financially as a gig worker and also increase your earnings by increasing your awareness of what your market has to offer. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new and hit that bell notification if you want more videos on how to succeed in the gig economy. Be safe, be profitable. Elijah out.